Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this special meeting to order of the Regional School District Number 8 Board of Education. I know most of you were probably just in the hearing. If not, but we also gained a board member, and Ms. D'Amelio is here to join us tonight. So I'll start again with the roll call to the left.
Tom Tremont, Hebron.
Carol Shea, Marlboro.
Michael Turner, Marlboro.
Claudia Hebron.
Richard Jacobson, Hebron. Danny Holtzclaw, Andover.
Kevin Williams, Hebron.
Judy Benson Clark, Marlboro.
Joe Connor, Hebron.
Bob Szymanski, Superintendent of Schools.
Jane Neal, Business Manager.
Kathy Mund, Administrative Assistant.
Okay. Thank you very much. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is pulled back in the classroom. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 on the budget, which is public comments. If anyone would like to address the board at this time, please feel free to do so. Please come forward, state your name, or stand up. You don't have to come forward in this room, but if you could just stand up and say your name and your town. I will remind you that we do have a second public comment section towards the end of the agenda as well. So if you're not sure if you want to come up at this time, that's fine. There will be a subsequent opportunity. So if anybody would like to address the board at this time. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to item number 4, report of the administration. Dr. Szymanski?
As you can see, we presented the budget this evening. Over the past 2 weeks, I've suggested some areas of reduction for the board. Excuse me. The first one, being on March 23rd, 2015, they proposed certain reductions in the budget. We talked about changes in program and reduction in staff. So that those cuts, and they're detailed on the second page of the sheet. If anyone needs a copy of the sheet, I have extras here. And then the areas from where the reductions were taken are listed in the subsequent sheets, and that would reduce the budget to 4.5%. So if you care to discuss those, we'd be willing to do so at this moment, and then we can move on to the second set of recommendations or suggestions.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding the 2015-2016 proposed operating budget. Just a quick note to the board, we didn't have a quorum last week at the meeting at Andover, but it was well attended by people from community students and a lot of alumni regarding concerns with the arts program. So there've been no changes or anything since we proposed. So there I will open back to any discussion, recommendations, and how you stand.
I'd like to make a motion to move the $100,000 for the SRO to a separate line on the referendum.
Is there a second to that? I'll second that. Motion made by Amy, seconded by Rich to have a separate line item, item on the referendum.
Yes.
Okay. So that brings up.
Sure. I think that the security is a very sensitive topic and one that we've spent a lot of time talking about within the board, and given the requests to keep the budget at 3%, where we can't do everything, and though security is in fact a priority, when we were discussing it initially, Mr. Leslie had said that he didn't need one. I don't know how the public feels, and rather than have this board kind of fight that one out back and forth again, to put it out to the people to say, like, what are your priorities? I mean, we have state troopers that visit the building, that come in. People want to pay the $100,000. I suggest we take it out of this budget and we put it on the referendum. So if people want to pay the $100,000 or $86,000 or whatever it is exactly, then we'll add that to the budget at that time, rather than have it in our budget at this point.
So basically, we would go to the voters. Is that right?
That's what my suggestion.
Okay, anyone else on that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a sensitive subject. $100,000 is a lot of money in this budget. We're planning on stripping a lot of stuff out there, and I think we should be relying on that without the public input. In this case, I do think a referendum is the right way to go.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
I have a
Yes,
question.
sir.
Is it 100,000 or is it 86,000?
I think the cost is 86, it's in the budget as 100,000, because I think we were, and I could defer to Dr. Swininski, I think we fine-tuned some of the costs
We
last
got
week.
some of the costs as we went further into the process, and we indicated the cost would be about $86,000.
And my only comment to that is I think we need to be careful that we make sure that there's training and certifications that are associated with the school resource officer, that there should be some provision in that cost to make sure that it's there, so.
I'd also just like to add that I'm still perplexed about the idea that it is a 12-month position for a police officer that's going to be in the building when the building is only open 9 months out of the year. And what are we paying for? And how are we going to utilize, just so people from the public can consider this in their vote.
Any other comments on this?
I guess I just offer a counterposition for thought. This board has had obviously multiple conversations about this topic. There's been opportunity through public comment for us to receive comment back relative to this topic. It wasn't done in any particular covert way. The authorization to pursue or look into establishing an agreement with the town of Hebron was voted on by the board and approved by the board. So to me, that indicated it was the will of the board to proceed with that. I don't have a problem with looking at potentially reducing the amount we have in the budget for the line, considering that personally, I don't think it's likely we're necessarily going to have an agreement outlined before we open the doors in September. So it may be less than a full year that we have to cover the cost. But I'm just not comfortable at this time saying, the board said go forward, now we're going to yank it back and throw it back out to a referendum vote.
I think what we're asking, we're being asked to consider this budget, and the towns are coming back and saying, we don't want an increase, we want a 3%, which is minimal. I mean, we're cutting programs with that. And I thought that we're gonna fund a new position, because we don't have this position at this point. The $100,000 from last year went to snow plowing, I believe. So I think that it makes sense to have the public weigh in on this, and our board members too. I mean, the towns are sitting here asking for 3%.
Tom?
Yeah, I just want to bring up the idea that, with the SOI, it just isn't a man in the building with a gun, okay? And that seems the way everybody kind of looks at it, maybe even the public, because I know up in Enfield, they have there was a thing about they have a security guard at each of the schools, they have quite a bit. And it sounded like that's just what they had, was a security guard, a man with a gun. And I mean, I had no problem with a man with a gun in the building, but what I was hoping for, and I think the majority, I would think, that it's more than a man with a gun. I mean, I expected the gentleman, whoever we have, or if we ever get one, to be more in tune with the students, okay? And be one that, and I know we discussed it about being able for students to go to the person with a problem or something they know, because we just had an incident with, you know, with kind of language written in the bathrooms, maybe things like that could be nipped in the bud sometimes if someone knows about it and someone's gonna do it, and they get a hold of this gentleman, and he can interact, okay? I would hope that would work that way, and I don't see why it couldn't, because, you know, students, something, I don't care what they say, sometimes they don't know who to go with when they have information, all right, and they don't want to get repercussions either, and I can understand that happens in daily life with everybody. And I would hope an officer like that would, you know, have the nature that he, you know, would have kids that could confide in him, and that they could go to him, and they could work something out and not have to worry about any kind of repercussions. And also, the security, sometimes we get away from it, that it isn't just for the children, the students, it's actually for everybody in the building, even for the grown-ups in the building, okay? So people gotta look at it that way. I know the security, you know, it zeroes in on students, but it's everybody in the building who has to feel safe, you know, and as they have a job, you know, working here, and as I understand, they would feel safer if they did have a security officer on the premises. I believe that's how the administration feels, and I go along with it. But I just don't want to make that point, that's all. Just not a man with a gun.
Thank you, Tom. Again, I always forget sometimes to, you know, managing the meeting, but I also need to speak up at times. So, this was put on the budget last year. This was presented last year clearly in the budget as an item that we were going to try to facilitate and put through. The logistics of it turned out to be much harder to do it correctly than what we imagined it would be. I'm speaking, is that the floor? Thank you. So it was included in the budget last year. We had a meeting with the Hebron town about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago where we had some discussions. There were some logistical issues about trying to make it work. If I think Mr. Jeff Watt, the way he spoke to me, says that the board very clearly supported the board's need for a school resource officer. And I don't think there was any ambiguous language there whatsoever, other than the mechanics of making that work conceptually, contractually, however that stands. So I think it's great whenever we can put something to referendum, but I totally disagree with having to rehash this as another separate line item after the board has already taken action on this, not only in last year's budget, which was approved by, I think, all three towns for the first time in a while, but the idea of taking this and putting it again for another referendum, it's kind of, why are we doing that? It's kind of like we're saying, do you want us to say no when you're telling us yes? So that's the way I feel. I would recommend that we vote this down. So that's my 2 cents on it. Is there anyone else that would want?
I want to correct you on one thing, is it was not put in last year's budget as an SRO. It was put in as door readers or some other miscellaneous security. It was never specified as an SRO in our approved document. Thank you. But this isn't about whether we all want an SRO. I don't think anyone would say, no, that wouldn't be a good idea. Is it textbooks or is it the police officer? And that's what it's coming down to.
Well, please, Judy, go ahead.
I think where we find ourselves is an incredibly difficult budget. The slides that were up shows that RHAM has one of the lowest per pupil expenditures in the entire state. So it's a difficult position, and I am very much in favor of a school resource officer. That being said, and I really am very much, that being said, I applaud Amy's creativity in trying to at least look at what do we do with this very difficult situation, given the situation that towns are in. And, you know, looking at things even here, I know one particular set of workbooks, Latin, Greek roots, that are being cut. And they're just fantastic workbooks. So, and they are basic things that could have been there 20 years ago, 50 years ago. It's not some kind of newfangled, amazing thing. So this is a pretty, I think, a pretty modest budget, a pretty conservative budget that's trying to balance all of the mandates. And I think what that does is, as I said, I'm very in favor of an SRO, I am, but it does put it in the hands of the people, which is what is supposed to happen in a democracy.
I support having an SRO officer, but we did, you know, discuss it at length, and this is my first year on the board, so I don't know what occurred last year. We discussed it, there were reports, and I attended some previous meetings where presentations were made, it was discussed, we voted on it. And I think it's important because it's a safety, security issue, and I always feel that's one of our charges is to support those types of issues. And as for it being a 12-month position, we have many summer programs that occur in the school during the summer. And also there was supposed to have been education and training during the summer for the SRO. That was part of the rationale that was given previously, and we all talked about, and we also heard testimony from the audience and from taxpayers. And I think we just need to move forward. We have been sitting here for months hashing through everyone's personal agenda relative to something that in the past they didn't like or didn't want. You know, they wanted to bring it out again and again and again. And I think we just need to move on, and you know, we're never going to get this budget approved if we keep revisiting every issue that we've already voted on. And this is one that we voted on. That was my impression.
Thank you, Carol. Just a clarification, Dr. Szymanski, you gave us a proposed 3% scenario, I think, 2 weeks ago. Did that include the school resource officer?
Yes, it did.
So,
I have copies of that, so you can see.
so you have a proposed 3% budget conceptually that the board can consider that includes funding the board, yes or no?
But it doesn't include maintenance. So as far as we're talking about security and safety of the building, we have to include maintenance as well. So when we're talking about 100,000 here, 100,000 there. I mean, I'm trying to make compromise for Marlboro, but I'm not hearing that that's happening. So
Yeah, I'm just reading this. I just want to talk to answer the question.
I have it here. It's not.
I can't tell
It's
if
in
it's
there.
included or not.
It was under further proposed reductions for consideration.
Right. in
But
addition
that
to-
was in addition after we were at 3.01%.
Right.
Yeah, Bob, if I'm looking at the second round of the proposed reductions that you made, the title exclusive of the further proposed for consideration was a reduction of $372,462, which left a gap between that and the number to get to 3% was about $30,000, $30,302. What you then listed was the $100,000 that we have in capital in the budget, the $100,000 we have for the SRO, and the $51,058 for textbooks, and said, if you're going to find the other $33,02, here are 3 more areas to look at, excuse me, to find the $33,02 that you need to get to that 3% target,
That's correct.
okay?
So it includes this one.
So it doesn't include a $100,000 reduction, it's just that $30,000 has to come from,
One of those
in
three.
their recommendation, would come from one of those 3, if we don't find it somewhere else.
Yeah, Joe.
I also applauding it for, you know, trying to be creative about it, because I read the article, you know, from Marlboro, trying to consider cutting a state police officer. I also know Hebron is looking at that as well. I definitely support an SRO. However, we are trying to get somewhere, and I know Carol has a good point as well, but we're a long ways away from trying to get this budget down. And I surely don't want to do what we did last year and back into a 3% number because we're being told, you know, like last year we got letters from Hebron, and, you know, I sympathize with Marvel. They're in a very, very difficult position, and there's so much into this that we haven't done. We have no capital in this budget. It's at 5.1, it's a realistic budget in my eyes, you know? And if we go down this road and looking at a 3% and we need to get to 3%, we have to cut more textbooks, which is another proposal down here, I'm not gonna be in favor of that. I understand that special ed has gone extremely through the roof and we have no control over that number. However, I look at it from my own, having 3 kids in the school system, none of our children should have to be any less fortunate or unfortunate to have textbooks taken away from them. You know, if we have to support special ed at $700,000 increase, then I don't think that my children or any of the other parents in this school have to suffer and not get textbooks because we can't afford textbooks, but we have to afford special ed. You know, so we're in a very difficult position here to try and come up with creativity. How do we skin the cat and get to a specific number? And you know, we understand that 3, 4.5, 5.1. You know, last year we just said this is a number and that's what we go with, and everybody was upset with that. You know, when you look at the budget, you know, I think we've done a very good job in our facilities committee to outline what capital improvements need to be done here. And we're not even scratching the surface with this, okay? We've had volunteers come up to our school, do a lot of work 2 years ago, okay? And, you know, we definitely understand a declining enrollment. We have to look at all these things, but we should not be talking about textbook cuts so bare bone. If we get down to that, we're only going to be funding $5,000 for textbooks. That's ridiculous. So, again, I want to go back to the SRO, and I applaud you if you're trying to think outside the box. You know, if Marlboro's considering cutting a state trooper for $100,000, we have to start looking at it, even though we voted on it, you know, and I do support it. I think everybody here, like Rich says, we do support it, but if it comes down to textbooks and SRO for a lot of us, I'm sure we're going to have to make some tough decisions here, you know. So that's all I want to say. Let's don't, you know, let's just try to get through this logically and see where we can cut some money. I have some suggestions as well, but I think the SRO, take a vote, see what we want to do with it. But I have one question on the SRO. Kevin, you made a comment that we're not ready to go on September 1. I'm under the impression that we are ready to go September 1.
I have a contract. We need to do the hiring. We need to establish protocols for the SRO. So we would be ready to begin the process of interviewing as soon as there was approval for the process.
Okay, so we will be, if we do approve it, it will be ready to go on September 1.
Yeah, we're going to do some preparation over the summer.
Okay, but not July 1 as the contract says.
After July, we would have to, once the budget was approved, we would have to post the position, interview for the position, and then there's an interview process that's spelled out in the contract, and I don't remember that exactly. And then begin the process of sitting with the SRO, outlining specific duties, relationship to the principals, and then again review the building security plans to be sure that those are in line with what's expected, or what he expects or she expects. I think there's a lot of work to get going to be sure that we're up and running.
But with Hebron and you, we're good. We're good. Okay, thank you.
It's the organizational work that needs to be done.
Thanks for the clarification.
Did we ever finalize what the cost,
Yeah, it was getting out at the last meeting.
but that only included his salary, health insurance, dental, FICA, pension, vehicle, and gasoline. It didn't include any of the educational parts of his job or her job. The training plans.
The cost of the employee is there, the cost of the officer being here and doing the law enforcement part of the contract. If there's any additional cost for teaching classes, Bob, is that factored in there?
No, we didn't, you asked for the total cost of the SRO, and that was the 86,000.
I think,
If we're going to have training for them, we'll probably have to add at least another $4,000 or $5,000 in there.
and I think Scott had addressed that at the last meeting too. There was a question about if there would be any significant cost associated with any classroom type teaching for the officers. Mary said it was minimal.
Yeah, no, it would, in terms of providing space in the building and that sort of thing, yeah. it would be a
No
cost.
materials that he's gonna need to present. No materials or any other supplies that he's gonna have to.
You know, it's hard to say what, but I think that getting off the ground, that's not gonna be I think we can focus on the cost of the SRO, get the program rolling, and any equipment that we need, that's a discussion we would be having in the following year.
Yes, Carol?
Yeah, once again, I'd like to point out, and Kevin just mentioned it too, that the SRO has only proposed further reductions for consideration in the 3.01% budget that Dr. Szymanski gave us here. And the same thing goes for the capital budget. Right now, there is $100,000 in our budget for capital, correct? All right, just want clarification there.
That's for me.
That's not capital.
It's-
Label is capital, but it's not a capital fund, it's maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, but it's not really a capital fund, it's a maintenance fund.
Well, you want to clarify that?
But I used the name that was brought forth from the previous budget. We had a special capital budget that was, that the facilities subcommittee worked on, and I handed out to.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
And the purpose of this was, I just used the line that was in the budget so that it could be brought forward with ease. And then the other projects that were in excess of $10,000 were on that other list.
So what does the 3% include? Just?
The 3% does include
Doesn't?
the SRO. It
Yes.
includes those capital budget maintenance items. It
Okay.
includes those textbooks. And the reason they were put there is you still have $30,000 to go to get to an even, 3% budget. And I just wanted to show you some places you could consider, that's all.
And just,
Thank you. I appreciate that too. I just want to let you know I appreciate you having broken it down for us. It's helped to create some focus, which is I think what we need. And I think that we need to really look at the sheet and see what it says. Because I'm hearing a lot of miscellaneous comments about, this is not net, this is. I think you really need to look at what the 3.01% budget at 290 reduction.
well,
Thanks.
Carl, if I could just to reiterate, or just to add to the discussion, the reductions that Dr. Szymanski put forth 2 weeks ago, we didn't get a chance to discuss it at the last meeting. Question came up during the hearing about the refunding of the bonds. The savings from the refinancing of the bonds, about $126,000 is one of the reductions included in here. One of the reductions in that proposal is to eliminate the proposal to begin funding freshman sports. There's a additional stipend removed of $13,000. And there's a desktop technician there that's included, guidance assistants, there's a paint stripers removed, the John Deere tractor, and then the one-to-one computer reduction. The combination of about $291,000 in reduction, I guess, or is it $372?
Let me,
Yeah, please, Jane.
up above, the revenue is 81,000.
Right.
And then these further reductions are 291,000, which gets you to $372,000. right?
Oh, I see.
So that would be about a 3.1, or I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, I left the formula in there that says if you really wanted to reduce the budget to a straight 3%, you needed $402,000. She would still need to find
30,000.
30,000, or you could just stay with the 372. And then below that gray line are 3 other options.
But the 372 number includes the 167 from the first round, correct? No, I'm
No.
sorry,
No.
the 372 is the 81 and the 291.
Correct.
Okay, but to get to 3%,
You have to also,
We'd have
added
to
the
adopt this first round.
167.
correct.
Because the 167 is actually 4.5, so this takes you from 4.5 to 3.
So circling back to the original motion, because we do have other, we still can discuss the budget, but I want to get back to a proposal by Amy to put the issue of the school resource officer on referendum as a separate item. Rich, you have a question? Any more comments on it? If not, I want to ask for a vote.
I just think it's a little early to try and split something out to see if it gets done. I mean, if it's something like that, gets us so we can go home and cook breakfast and go to work, I consider for right now, I just like to keep everything together.
Okay. All right, okay, the last comment I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of Amy's motion to add the school resource officer as a separate decision line on referendum, say aye.
Aye.
Put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? What's the numbers? I couldn't count. Is it-
Tom, are you voting for or against?
I voted for that.
Okay, so.
So that's a 5-4. That's a 5-4,
I
yes.
think it needs to clarify though.
So are we saying it passed?
So it passes, yeah, so it's going
Passes
to
5-4.
separate line item as a referendum. On that referendum, sorry. Okay, moving on to any further discussion. Is there any motions at this time regarding the budget?
Can I just ask a question? So
Yes.
that means that we can take $100,000 off this budget?
Off the operating budget, correct.
That's for the budget, yeah.
I have a question. On object 131, 132, redemption of principal and interest, with the new refinancing, what are these lines supposed to look like now?
Reduce them by 126,000.
126,000, and what we would do is we would take the sheet that I'd given you previously. You take this sheet that I gave you previously, and then add this to the other 2 bond issues that were out there. You will recall, we refinanced the bond in 2007. I think that one was for about 18 million, and then we refinanced another one in 2012. So the debt service would be a combination of those 3 items.
Do we have a schedule for the next 2 or 3 years? So this schedule that we've been working is incorrect at this point.
No, it's the schedule that's in there is the schedule as of your first proposed budget, because the refinancing.
Yes, right.
Not
But-
incorrect.
But now that we've redone the bonds, it doesn't matter.
There were 3 bond issues. 2 of the bond issues are correct. The third one would have to be adjusted based on the refinancing.
Okay.
So yeah, your point
Well,
is
we
right.
need the answer.
Your point is right. Until we as a board make a motion and reduce that number, our budget looks like the expense is higher than our actual expense is.
Right, and we want to get those line items corrected with what they're supposed to be.
It's 126,000, 181.25.
If you look at
There's an increase in the debt service for $173,140, is that correct? Between this year, this
I think as we look at the bond issue, I think that, remember, that hadn't been applied to any place yet. Remember that there was consideration whether to apply it as budget reduction, there was consideration to use it for capital.
Understood.
No decision had been made.
But the question is, we have a number in the proposed budget for 5.1, it includes a debt service. And that was done before we did the refinancing.
That's correct.
The refinancing has changed now.
That's
So
right.
we have a forecasted savings of about 126,000.
Exactly.
So the board is asking for clarification of what that new number is, because that's not, we didn't finance the only bonds we had, correct? Because the question is that there was a $176,000 increase.
There's a sheet that I think that I handed out, they handed over, I want to share with everybody, can you just give me a moment?
We had an increase of 173,149 in this year's budget. If our savings is only 126K. Right. We're not saving money, we're reducing the increase. Reducing the increase. Yeah.
I have copies of this, if anybody wants.
No, we have that, we just want to see
There's one
that.
other sheet that I want you to have, and you can, it's the combined, I did, I asked the bank.
So let me ask you this, is it proper to take the 176,000, remove the 126, and come up with a?
Just give me a second, I think I can.
Increase?
What this was the sheet that we had handed out. And the question for the bank at the time was, if we added $100,000, $1 million in capital budget, how would that affect the bond payment? Now, let me hand this out, then we'll go over it. If you look at the sheet, has everybody got a copy of the sheet?
Yep.
If you look at the sheet, the first two columns, the first column rather, represents $1 million in additional borrowing for capital budget. My charge to the bank was, okay, what does it look like if we borrow $1 million for capital improvements? What they did is they said, okay, there's what the $1 million would cost annually. Then it would take the current debt service, that's all our borrowings combined. And then the third column is a combination of both of those. So I think that the answer to Mr. Bakers's question is in that middle column.
Well, that's right. The middle column is the only column in question right now, I guess, is the one we need clarification on. What is the gross number for debt service in the proposed budget in the 5.1 bond? What is that number?
I think it would be $2,496,000.
2,496,000, and this says 4.2 million. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. All right.
It's under just the current debt service in the total column, principal plus interest
Is 2,000,000.
totals 2.496.
356, and that reflects the reduction of the
That
126.
reflects the reduction.
126.
So-
181. So what was the number in the original proposed budget for debt? It's got to be towards the back.
We were seeing the budget separated from principal interest.
It's fine.
So the principal is,
What line are you?
1,920,000 and $1,920,000 and
Interest.
749,506.
49,506. All right, so 1,920,000 plus 749,506. 2,669,506 is that total. 2,669,506 would have been our total original budget minus what's now 2,496,356. Minus 2,496,356.
173.
173, 150. That's the difference.
So that number that you mentioned is what?
So the total in the original budget, if you add the principal and interest, was 2,669,506. And the number now, as refinanced, is 2,496,356.
So that was your original.
Yep.
This is your right here. The difference is 170.
173, 150.
that's still an increase.
Well, you have other debt, or other bonds. This is just a series of bonds that was refinanced.
The schedule of payments for bonds is established when the bond is sold. And that it's not an equal distribution of the principal. It's based on what the underwriters were, the way it's sold. So that if you look at page 4 of this document, I'll keep it out.
Bob, what are you doing? We didn't refinance the whole kid and caboodle of bonds.
No, we didn't.
No,
But
because we did some 2 years ago.
we did some in 2007, we did some in 2008.
So those aren't gonna change, because they're still
No,
set.
but what I'm saying is that there isn't an equal distribution of payments.
Right.
Here,
But the principle is you're paying less than,
let me hit this up, then I'll show you. Look at page 3.
Interest changes. It's like, almost like payments. Joe, you can see the columns on this sheet here. You can see how your principal payments change from year to year. And your interest payments.
yeah, but your principal, in theory, right, your principal, at the beginning, your principal, you're paying more in principal, right? And as you-
Look at the
as you go-
schedule, look at the schedule, Joe. If you look at the middle schedule, you go from 1.6 to 1.8 to 1.9 to 2.1 to 2.2. See how the principal increases, but then your interest decreases.
So are these, how old are these bonds? Are these new bonds?
No, we refinanced bonds in 2007, we refinanced them again in 2012, and we refinanced them in 2015. So there are 3 issues of bonds that we can only refund after a certain period of time. I believe it's 7 years. So that when each of those bonds reach that 7-year maturity, we refunded them. And then hence
So that's why you have a higher principal and you're paying less in interest, and it goes the other way around as you get, as they mature, you're paying more, less in principal and more interest.
yes, but the payments aren't divided equally. I think that's the
So for clarification's sake, I just want to make sure I've got this straight. The original proposed budget called for 2,669,506, if you add principal and interest together. You're saying now it would be 2,496,356 would be our actual. So if we authorize a reduction in the budget of 173,150, we would be acknowledging the reduction in what we're paying on those bonds.
That would be my understanding.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the budget by $173,150.
Is there a second? Second by Amy.
Ready?
So what was this here, 126, 181?
That was the net savings for refinancing the last series of bonds that we did right after we went into budget. That's this report here. Right. We just got this. So in fact, that also has a savings next year. If you remember, the board decided to take the savings in the first 2 years rather than spread it across the next 10 because it was minimal. So,
What are we saying here, so what's our,
well, you got a motion right now on the floor. It's been seconded by Amy. We're in discussion on the motion to reduce the budget by 173,150 from the 5.12 amount. Is that what we're doing? And that would be in addition to the 100,000?
In addition to the 100,000 that came off the SRO.
Because it was due to refinancing.
That's
So
due,
it's- It
right.
was an estimate, so it's a savings.
When we originally got the 5.12% budget proposal,
It
Yeah.
included the two.
well, we're not voting on the actual budget now, it's just.
no,
just
no,
no,
this is to reduce the budget number that we're going to vote on ultimately.
We're ultimately going to vote for something, hopefully tonight.
All right.
So, all right, I support that request, so that's my 2 cents on that. Anybody else?
So what used to be 126, 181 is now 173, 150?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, now, just remember, we've been doing this successfully for 5 years. We've been putting it off and putting it off, and, you know, you'll have a smaller savings next year. In the end, you're gonna have to find 70.75% somewhere, someday, sometime.
Mike, just for
It's the
clarity.
same unimaginative way we've been dealing with our problems. We're just gonna kick them down the road another year.
Well, that's what I don't understand what you mean, we've been doing this, putting it off. What are
But
we
every
talking
time
about?
we refinance a bond, we used it to offset our operating expenses. You know, here we are, we're not doing anything to really take care of the longer term needs of our building. And, you know, we kept costs low from 2008 to 2011, whatever, with the federal grants for schools when the economy was bad. We hoped things would get better, and they haven't. And Mal won't mind me using his name, but, you know, last year he did a graph showing, trying to do some stuff with the heating budget. He just showed our costs going up over the past 3 years. They're doing it. We got a lot of pressures that are hard to deal with, and it's gonna do it again this year. It's not hard, it's not fun. Railings are flat, they're staying flat. You know, we're moving it down the road, we'll get through today, but we're just gonna have a bigger pile tomorrow.
But Mike, I'm just trying to understand, you mean that because we're not using the savings from the financing to take care of capital needs, is that what it is? That
You know, I'm putting that out there.
No, that's what I'm
Just
asking.
make sure you- yeah.
I'm trying to understand your point, okay, all right.
I'm echoing what Mike's saying, because that's one of my proposals, is that now we know it's a different number, in our favor. You know, if we didn't refinance these bonds, people think about this for a second, if we didn't refinance the bonds, you wouldn't have a savings. So we still be looking for that number, it would be 126,000 to come off the budget. So it's nice to sit there and, you know, think that we're taking from the budget, and that's really a reduction. That was found money, you know, because somebody had the creativity to go out and find it, you know? And Mike's absolutely right. One of my pet peeves is, you know, getting on this board, you know, I hear everybody's woes about, you know, their economic situations. It isn't getting any better. It's not getting any better here either. You know, we got a track out there we could use this money for to resurface the track. You know, we keep putting out fires. You know, a boiler blows up, it's $81,000. We gotta find that money. We don't have it in a budget, no capital fund whatsoever. You know, so we gotta start thinking about that. You know, Dick Shea wrote a good article about, you know, the honeymoon's over. And he couldn't be more correct. It's time that we start putting a plan together. I know it's not the right time, but, you know.
I hear, Joe, I hear you, and Mike, I hear you. Rich, I know you're on that same line as well. And I don't disagree. There are significant capital issues that we have to deal with. But Joe, you made the point earlier, you don't want to take it out of textbooks. You don't want your kids deprived of textbooks. You don't want to take away, you know, course opportunities or class opportunities the students need. You don't want to take it out of capital. It's got to come out of somewhere, because if we put a budget out here and you put it, I'll even take it down to 4%. You put a 4% increase out here, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to fail in at least 2 of the 3 towns.
Well, you know, the thing with that, Kevin, and I appreciate your comments, the thing that I'm, you know, nobody wants to pay more in taxes. So, you know, at some point where, you know, there was a proposal I heard to bond $1 million. I don't want to bond $1 million to fix our capital needs. I think that's not the right move. You know, you know, maybe the 5.1 number is a real good number, but nobody wants to swallow that pill. You know, and I don't want to take it out of textbooks.
Can I ask a question? Of the
Sure.
5.12% proposed budget, how much is allocated in there for capital improvements, besides the 100,000 that we call maintenance?
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, what they would be arguing though is the 173, 150 that's in the budget now as an expense that's not going to be a real expense, ends up giving you money you could put into capital.
But the original 5.12% never addressed. So if we were having a discussion here to say, before this refinancing, or with the 173 differential here, we were at 5.12%, and it's no different than what we had last year of $100,000 to address maintenance. There are no new capital funding priorities in this 5.12%. So
Just like,
yeah.
well, these bonds, I mean, it's like a bill you have to pay.
Mhm.
And this was Bob's way of doing it, just, refunding them. And if you don't keep paying them, it's like anything else, at the end, you're just gonna end up in a bigger pile that you're gonna have to pay. And evidently, I mean, I always go along with Bob, because it's figured to be the best plan, and I still believe it. I believe in Bob's judgment. But the bonds have to be met, that's my feeling, the payment of them, by refunding, so.
So Bob, can I just, for clarity, the 5.12 increase is 28,226,787, correct? Okay, and then eliminate the 100,000, since that's gonna go on a referendum line, right? So that brings us to 28,126,787. And then right now Kevin's proposing 173,150 to be added to that. I just wanna make sure we're running the numbers as we go. Okay, is there any further discussion on Kevin's motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment. That reduction of, actually, before I make a motion, I want to understand, because we had two numbers, right? We've been working with the 128, 126. Right, 181.
Yep.
And now we're at 173, 149. Can you help me understand why there's a delta now between that?
From what?
We originally were told that we have 126, 181 bond reduction,
Right.
but now we're talking about 173, 149 bond reduction.
Because we had, let's get back to this number again, Kevin, how do you get there again? You have the calculations right there.
Yeah, so all I did was from the original proposed budget, we had $1,920,000 in principal. We had $749,506 in interest. Those two added together is a combined debt service of $2,669,506. And what's proposed
In this current debt service schedule.
in that current debt service schedule is $2,496,356. So if you subtract that $2,496,356 from $2,669,506, you get $172,150.
Okay, so this is the real savings.
This is working with actual numbers.
So that was an estimate, and this is the real.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, in that case, I would like to amend, motion to amend that we target the 173, 150 to yet a new line item that actually goes into the capital fund, funding, I want to say the track, or what do I want to say to be determined later?
What's your motion?
To fund the resurfacing of track. That's it.
Just writing it down. There's an amendment to the motion. So we need a second to Rich's amendment.
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of this. Second by Joe, open for discussion on the amendment. And I'd like to, if you can get through this quickly.
Yeah, I think we already discussed it.
Yeah, we already did. Any other additional comments? Because I'd like to, if not, call a motion on the amendment.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Our question, how much does the track cost? Really? I don't know.
It says 129, but that was an old number, I think. It's on the yellow sheet.
the number of the track fund?
I believe it was 129.
129 is what's in there, but that quote's at least a year and a half old, probably more than that.
Much of it.
Any further comments on that? Would you like to ask for any other comments? No? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to take the proposed reduction of 173,150 in debt service and move it to a separate line item to fund the resurfacing of the track, the track, I guess, the track, competition track. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the amendment fails. That brings us back to the original motion to reduce the budget by 173,150. I think we discussed that. I'd like to call that to vote to all those in favor of the reduction of 173,150, mainly or only on the debt service line. Say aye. Raise your hand. All opposed? One opposed? Any
I'm
abstentions?
sorry,
Two
you went-
opposed.
This is,
Sorry.
you went too fast for me.
I'm sorry. Where'd I leave you?
I-
The motion, no, we got through the amendment, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then the motion made by Kevin was to reduce the debt service line by 173,150.
Does that mean the bottom line? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if I'm using line item wrong, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm reading through my notes here, so, reduce the debt service by 173,150.
Okay,
And that failed.
Four.
5-4, right?
all right, who was it?
Two,
So-
no, it was.
Another vote.
No, it's two, sorry, right? We'll do a recall. All those in favor of the reduction, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
There's the reduction.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? All opposed? Okay, it was two, sorry, my fault, 7-2. The motion passes. Any abstentions? Okay. So now we have a total of $273,000
Reduction.
in reductions.
I think we need a point of clarification.
Yep.
This not really, is it really a reduction of $100,000 to the SRO if it's gonna go to referendum?
Well, it's a reduction out of the budget that we're gonna propose to the town because it will be its own line. The ultimate expense, if the town approves that line, the taxpayers will pay for another $100,000. But if they vote that down, our budget line is separate from that conversation.
Can I make
The way
a
it's
point
been
of
done.
order?
Absolutely.
The towns have to carry that $100,000 in dividends. Whether you put it in a separate question or not.
Oh, in terms of
The
levy?
town has to, no, the town has to carry it in their budget question, in their total budget.
Oh, yeah, because you have to plan on it passing.
That's right.
Understood. Thank you, now.
So, Kevin, if you could do me a quick calculation.
I'm working on it right now. Okay, so now we're down to 27,953,637.
20, say it again. Sorry.
27,953,637.
Okay, so we're at 27,953.67. Can you get a budget, how much percentage of that's like a budget?
Yeah, there's another maybe, that's about a percent off.
So we're about. Okay. Any other action right now on the budget?
I'd like to make a comment, if I may.
Yep.
And, Bob did a very good job on giving us a budget, showing where he got his information. I noticed he went there, he headed all the departments and got a kind of a wish list. And we're dealing with, budgets, which I have, and even proposing some. There's always two columns in a budget, okay? There's a want list, okay? Oh, I'd love to have this. Oh, yeah. And then there's a real need list, which you can actually operate on, okay? It's the needs that'll make it work. And Bob, I gotta give Bob credit, you know, he went to everybody, and I think they gave a pretty good want list. Because we're talking about, you know, reductions here, and like it was brought up with like books. especially. And sometimes people throw in certain amounts, not to so much scare you, but to make you think twice, oh my God, the kid won't have the book. All right, and some of those tactics you use, I don't blame them, I use them myself. And you try to get people thinking. But I want, I'm just so people realize there's two lists there, okay? What they really want and the wish list and what they actually can operate on. And they're not especially going to tell you, but you kind of sometimes got to take it apart and figure it yourself. We're just nitpicking a lot of things here. What should we reduce here? Well, no, we shouldn't do that and that. It should be across the board, that's my feeling. We take it and we're going to do reduction, we do across the board. Every department takes a hit. It's even kind of a fair way. And I think every one kid, like I said, I don't always believe in a want list that great. And I myself, I'll go on record now to even put that I won't favor anything unless it's a 2.5 to 3% increase. The 5 ain't gonna apply.
Do you want to make a motion?
No, I won't make a motion really, no, no. But I'm just putting how I feel, and I think how it's gonna go. Because I'm not in favor of 5% at all myself as a taxpayer in the town.
We're down to 4 point, what's the new number, is it 4.4?
Well, you're down to that, but you're not.
4 point, now about roughly 4 point.
I understand that, but you're not down to the figure I like to hear you.
Well, that's what I'm asking, if you want to make a motion.
No motion, I'm just making a statement, that's it.
So I'm gonna make the next motion. That we accept the superintendent's recommendation from March 23rd, 2015 for a reduction of $167,461.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second it for discussion. Kevin?
Okay, so, again, in looking at the recommended reductions that the superintendent has offered or proposed to try to get us down to a 3% number, there was an original proposal that has to be accommodated to get us there. That proposal was a balance between some program and some personnel changes that would reduce the net amount by that $167,461.
What's included in that?
Laundry list. It's got various items from applied technologies, art, athletics, business office, English, PE, maintenance, guidance, math, music, office of the principal, science and social studies, superintendent's office, world language, and personnel.
Any other discussion or questions on that, Carol?
I believe I do support that motion because I think and Bob Zielinski can verify this, the reductions in that group that we're addressing at the moment, those were as a result of your direct conversations with people in the various departments.
Those were, and I think that the one big one in that whole group was that Jay went through and looked at the request for substitutes and used the 3-year average, and Russ was able to reduce that by $93,000.
And it was also in conversation with the departments.
That's correct.
So these were things that they said they could live with and still function well.
So Bob, could you, I'm sorry, Carol, I'm not apologizing.
Well, anyway, that's why I believe I will support this, at this point, this reduction. I'd like to see it go lower, but I think you're right, we gotta start somewhere, and that's a good start. And I really think too that, we can toss around all kinds of concepts about what we think is important should be reduced, but we should really focus on the things that the departments have said that they can live with.
Bob, can you comment on that group, the 167, 461?
What I did was I met with each department and reviewed the supply budgets.
Right.
And said if your budget was supposed to be reduced, what would you survive to allow the programs to go further, and then they established the priorities.
Right. Okay. So you're comfortable with those numbers?
Yeah.
Well, on this thing on 323, it also has things added into it, correct? Milling machine for the robotic arm, basketball curtains, and something for the stage, saying that was a safety issue. The PA bells and master fly. And a few other things. How much did it ultimately, do you know how much it ultimately took out of instructional supplies? I guess about 65 or something.
We did it, because of the way the budget is set up, we did it line item by line item. I could get it to you, but.
18,240.
Yeah.
18,240.
Was the total reduction in instruction supplies? Across all?
This thing did that for the 611 object code.
Okay.
Is that for?
Is there any further discussion on that?
I'd like to make a motion to amend to reduce the reduction $2,745. That will make up Latin and Greek root workbooks 2 TE, 3, 4, 5, and the English textbooks.
Okay. Motion by Rich to reduce that proposed reduction by $2,745 specifically for which textbooks?
The Latin Greek root workbooks 2 TE, 3, 4, 5, and the English textbooks.
You had that, Kathy? Sorry.
Kathy,
Okay,
and how
well,
much
let's let
do we
Kathy
have?
catch up. Kathy, relax and.
Is there a second to the motion?
Not yet, but I just wanted to get clarity as to the proposal.
My computer just died.
Well, take your time. Do we need to recess for about 5 minutes? Is it plugged in? Is the extension plugged?
Yes, it is. And the green light is lit.
Is the strip turned on?
We're near the.
Yes, it's.
Do we need to take a recess for a few minutes? So that you
I've got
can.
another computer.
Okay.
I don't use a computer.
We definitely have to count this, it's important.
Take a couple minutes.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute recess so she can get caught up. Thank
Yep.
you. We'll be in recess for you.
5 minutes.
We have to. I'm just gonna let it roll. Because we can't come back and ask you.
It goes online. I don't know, you can ask the board, I don't
That's when you were going
It's separate.
No, I lost a whole bunch
So they have an upgrade.
I think we do.
Thank you.
So our levy is. Yeah, okay. When And that levy gets included in the general budget. Talk about general government, and then talk about law says and it's I think that I'm back up. Yeah, tomorrow night we're going to the town's piece of referendum. They will have what's called.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that budget is included. It's not included because the district, which is meeting the residents from every over and they vote
Also, it's not a
we have to approve this as our portion. We have to approve prior charge. General budget. We have to approve 3 questions. No, that's at the referendum. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the general budget and which will include whatever number they come up with tonight. Everything on this general budget, school budget, all the things that are on that.
Just, can we help catch you up with anything? We don't have
So far, there's no second.
but I haven't asked yet because I want to make sure you have information. When I look back, you were ready and everything. The amendment was to reduce the proposed reduction by $2,745. Yeah, correct. So the 167 that he proposed, that's on the floor, was amended to reduce that by $2,745.
Okay, for what?
For the, I want to make sure you have this last. He was trying to.
Andy, I don't know.
So they're done. That's all. And English. Now we're going to vote on when we come back, we're going to ask for a second, and then we'll have a discussion.
And I asked
Everyone back? Kathy, you said you got power, you get it. So let's come out of recess at this time, and Rich has a proposal to reduce, proposed reduction of 167,461 made by Kevin to, by reducing that by $2,745, and that motion will be restoring from the list of the 167,461 funding for Latin,
Latin, Greek, group workbooks, 2 TE, 3, 4, 5, and English textbooks for 250.
and English textbooks.
And I will second that.
Okay. Motion, amendment was seconded by Kevin. That would, if this motion, this amendment is adopted, it'll change the reduction to 164,716.
And the reason being is that these are probably, other than one other item on the list, these are one of the most important things for our students to be ready for the testing that they're gonna be doing. This is directly relates to the new smarter balance, smarter balance testing and the SATs. So this can directly correlate to improved scores. This is something relatively new. These tests are going to be covering the way they do vocabulary. These books address that, so it's very applicable, and we should not be cutting out on that one.
Any other discussion on that amendment? Anyone would like to call a vote for it? All those in favor of reducing the offset by $2,745, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes, so that brings us down to a proposal to reduce the budget by $164,716. Is there a second to that? Do we have to get a second?
I made a second, more discussion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that amendment?
Which amendment?
I mean, not an amendment, sorry.
No.
On the motion. The motion has
Original
been
motion.
amended. The original motion was amended for a reduction of $164,716.
Okay.
My apologies, I'm just trying to keep track here.
I'd like to make an amendment to reduce the now, whatever that is, the reduction by $19,237 to put back in the geometry textbooks.
19,201.
37.
All right, is there a second? Motion seconded by Amy, discussion.
These books, again, we're currently using books from 1999 for geometry, which again is very much part of Common Core, which again our students are going to be tested on starting this year with the Smarter Balance and again the SATs. So again, this directly correlates to the performance of our students. The books are 1999 right now, so they're very old for this. We could say spread it out, but we already have other books that fall into the same category that need to be updated for Common Core for next year. So we're not doing it all at once by any means, but we do got to get started. And this is a very important thing to help our students perform better.
The only comment I'll add to this is that Mr. LaChance, I think, wrote us or sent a response to Joe, if I'm not mistaken, and said that he could live with the proposal, or he thought that the new numbers that were proposed in the March 23rd number
Yep, March 23rd.
were sufficient for him because it took care of the geometry books with the
That was
most need.
But they were AP though, weren't they?
No.
The geometry?
I think that's what his email said.
Can you pull up his email?
But he also said when he presented to this board that these were very important.
Right. Let me clarify that.
Oh, it's the email.
Bob, do you have it? Joe, do you have it by any chance? Any other discussion? That's why Joe's trying to find the email. Yeah, Carol.
Again, this was a reduction that was supported by the department.
Mhm.
I think they are the best judge of that. Also, as far as Common Core driving so much of these reductions to this budget we're talking about, we don't even have test results yet. We have yet to have test results from the SBAC tests that were taken last year. And I think that at that point, when we do get results, then there'll probably be another evaluation or assessment on the part of the departments to determine what direction they want to go in. They may change their mind. And frankly, I don't think geometry has changed that much since 1999. And if you have a good creative teacher, they can adapt to the Common Core teaching structure and they can use those textbooks creatively. So that's my comment.
If I could make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I have to agree with Mr. Shea that the department heads agreed that, they can live with this for the moment. And then being the educators, I wouldn't want to second guess them I guess I figure some people here on the board think they're educated, I guess, in one way or another. But that's what we have our administration for. I think they're the better judge of, but, you know, or how they would teach the kids what they have to learn. So I'd have to go along with them, so I think the reduction that, you know, isn't necessary, I go along with them.
Thanks, Tom. Just so everyone knows that this is accepted, the 164 proposed reductions right now. If the amendment is passed, it would reduce the offset now to 145,479. Just for everyone else. Any further discussion on
I have his email if you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
As indicated in the original budget request, the primary concern is the Geometry Level 1 textbook. These books are in the worst condition and most out of line with the Common Core. This is the textbook that I showed at the board meeting. The essentials of geometry text should also be purchased now to increase the level of rigor and provide more resources. These textbooks should still be in the request, 125 Larson for Level 1, 25 Berger for Essentials of Geo. The other new geometry texts for Level 2 and Honors would be helpful now or soon for additional problems/resources in Common Core alignment, but they are not as critical as the above books. The Honors and Level 2 teachers have supplemented the current text with additional resources to help align their courses with the concept of Common Core geometry. That is why the revised budget request included a reduction of 75 Berger text Level 2 and 80 Larson text Honors from the original request.
Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion on that? If not, I'll call the vote.
Well, he did say that he thinks they should have been put back on the budget. And I'm sorry that we haven't the results back, but our kids are going to be measured this year on the SATs that they're taking, and the kids next year. College is going to be looking at those scores. We don't have time for those students to wait for the results. I mean, Common Core is here, or actually it's been here, and it's time that we pony up a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to call it the vote.
Well, one comment I'll make, it's like a carnival trick. I didn't expect that teacher to bring the best books with him. It's anything else, you always bring the worst, yeah, that's right, Joe. And you're always gonna bring the worst one with you, right? So I wouldn't go by what he did on that. That's just a trick.
All right.
I've done budgets, I know.
All those in favor of the amendment to reduce the current reduction by $19,237 to cover the Latin, Greek, root, and English textbook. Oh, John, I'm sorry. The list is growing. I apologize. I stand corrected.
Get late, Dan.
Yes, that's not late. It's just I need to put these back on. So, which would bring the total reduction to 145,479. It's a $19,237 reduction. All those in favor of reducing the current, adding back in the $19,000, say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Is that an abstention, Joe? Or?
I voted no.
Oh, all right, thank you. Motion fails. So we're back to 164,716, which I'd like to go ahead and ask for a vote now. So, not yet. You got another proposed amendment?
Yeah.
Can we get through the amendments now? We're going to continue to go through. Is there a way that you can, if you've got more, can you compartmentalize them?
No, I'd rather do them individually. We, in the budget, we have an increase for police.
Hey, Bob. Rich, that's something you do.
We have an increase in police for 19,260. Let's see. Actually, that one we don't need, without the SRO, we don't need to.
That's
correct.
Let's go with the motion. If you got to amend it, let's go with the amendment. No, we don't have time. I have to keep this moving. No, excuse me. In respect to the board and the people here in attendance, make your motion. be ready for it. If you're changing your mind, then let's let somebody else take action, or if they have another motion, you have the floor, please make your motion.
Anyone's welcome to make an amendment or a motion.
Let's move the motion.
Yeah.
Move the motion.
All right, so then, I'm gonna ask for a vote on the motion then.
So I'm still discussing this.
Okay.
Read the motion.
No.
The motion is to.
Excuse me? I have the floor.
Make your motion. Now, if you're gonna make a motion to amend, please make it.
Okay. I make a motion to, here's the number, to increase the reduction.
Decrease. Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion to increase the reduction for an additional $10,600 for the removal of the John Deere tractor.
Okay, so you're adding $10,000 to the 164,706. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Discussion?
So just a clarification, Rich, so you're taking an item that was in the second round of recommendations from the superintendent and bundling it into this
Yes.
package?
It's got nothing to do with this motion.
So what would that
Right,
say?
so it's not an amendment to this motion, it's not included in this.
And then this here, I'm adding to this motion.
But it's not affected by the original motion. You can still make another motion after we're done with this to add this back in or further reduce it from the budget. There's a specific set of items in the motion that he's referring to in the March 23rd.
March 23rd, 2000.
That has a specific, which you were just referring to.
Right.
So we deal with that, and then after that's done, you can come back and make another motion for another reduction. The reduction rule doesn't end with this, but I don't want to amend a motion that doesn't take into account the John Deere tractor, because it was never added in. So why don't we just go through the motion for the 164, and you can come back in.
Let me rephrase my motion then. I move to increase the deduction to the line item called tractor by 10,600.
So
I'm increasing this line item, 10,600.
so you're adding, or you're decreasing, it said it's showing an offset of 1,989,
Right, I mean,
so you're changing
This
this
is
to
one of the-
12,000? $12,000 reduction? Or combined?
Yeah, it becomes 12,499, right?
Yep.
I'm lost.
Get on a roll.
And if you have another item you want to propose to cut, you can bring it after to get it.
No, I can't do that.
Or is there a second to his motion? Amy second.
What is the motion?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly do not know. There's a reduction to a reduction.
Are
Of
we
an additional
adding
10 He's
money?
adding $10,000
Yep.
to the
We're
budget.
adding money to the budget, is that what you're saying?
No,
I
no.
think he's reducing.
He's
Proposing a
reducing,
reduction.
Is reducing the tractor line item further, right?
So,
But the tractor isn't in this part.
no,
It is.
well, there's a line for tractor, it's not that tractor.
right, so right now, 164,716 is where we want, is where we were, plus 10,600. So it would now be 175,316.
Okay, there's a motion to amend the reductions from the March 23rd numbers, or the original motion made by Kevin of 164,716, which brings a new,
Now total.
to now 175,316.
316.
And Amy has seconded that. Is there any further
Hang on,
discussion?
Kathy, were you able to catch it that way?
Increase the budget by, increase the reduction by $10,600 for the tractor.
Right, which brings which if adopted, would bring the total proposed reductions to 175,316.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
What do we do, eliminate the tractor or?
Yes, eliminating the tractor.
Taking the tractor out of the budget.
Taking the tractor out of the budget.
Completely?
Okay, any further discussion on the tractor? Or the motion clarification?
I just want to be sure I got the right number, that's all.
Which, you're gonna help out.
It was 10,600.
From the 3% scenario you proposed, Bob, there was says the John Deere tractor, $10,600.
That was the rest of it.
That was the rest of it?
Yeah.
So we needed 1999, and then to that, we needed another 10,600.
Yep.
And that's net 12,599.
That would be the ultimate
I
total,
just want to be
yes.
sure I had the right number.
Right.
Okay. Any further
What is your
discussion?
reduction? What is your
New
revised
reduction.
proposed- Your revised proposed motion?
Is 175,316.
Is what the net total
Is
is.
what that's the additional amount just proposing amendment to be added to the 164,716.
Are we voting on the 175 or just the 10?
Nope, just the 10.6
Just on the
right now, that's the
10.6
amendment.
So, okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing vote, all those in favor of adding the 10,600 back in, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, or two abstentions? So that brings us, the total reduction is down to 175,316. Which brings us back to our original motion.
Yeah, one more. I make a motion to amend to remove the boys and girls track field uniforms for $2,000 from the deductions.
That was 2003.
So, an amendment to take out 2,000, add back in? Or
Correct.
take it out? So it'll be 173,316?
Correct.
So we're adding this back in.
So this is basically going to change it from, it would change it from 175,316 to 173,316.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Any discussion?
The track uniforms are really old. They're starting to talk about cutting people from track. Track and field is one of those things you don't want to cut people because they're paying a substantial amount for the sports pay to play. So it's a net positive. So it's not the area we want to be cutting. And it also gives a sport to a lot of kids that didn't have one.
So is there a proposed cut for the members of the track team because of uniforms?
No, I think that one problem we had is, we were talking about middle school track. I think there's a abundance of people who showing up, will try out the track. If I'm not mistaken, the track was strictly 119.
Oh, no, keep going. But 100 and close to 140.
Right. But I mean, there have been people cut because there's.
No, we have not, the uniforms are old, but we have not cut anybody. We're gonna cut, we have discussed possible for next year, trying to limit it a little bit, just because 140 is a lot of kids.
That's based on supervision, right?
It's based a lot on supervision and buses available to go to meets.
What a great problem though, really, that many kids want to be, it is.
It's a nice problem to have.
It is.
It is.
All right.
Do a lot of kids drop out, or once they get out, do they stay?
And sometimes at the end, by the end of the week, they don't like to run the mile.
Do you take the 40-pound pack off their back and then they're able to run a little bit?
No, we're not like that.
Maybe we should be, huh?
No,
But everybody stays in the program, that's my question.
no. We do have about, I'd say about 10, 15 might drop out. I say might, it all depends.
Yeah, no, I hear you, okay, all right.
We're running up on almost 9:20, so if there's any further discussion, if not,
No.
I'll bring it to vote. So all those in favor of reducing the 175,316 in proposed budget reductions by $2,000 to a total of 173,316, say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So we're to 173,360. Okay, that brings us back, which brings us back to the original motion, right?
Back to the original motion.
Okay. All right, and there's no further discussion on that. I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor of the original motion, which has now been amended to total reduction, additional reductions of 173,316, say aye, or raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm gonna fight it out.
You're a yea and nay, or?
Yay, I'm sorry.
You're a yea, okay, so it's unanimous? Any abstentions? All right, so in addition to the, all right, so now we're at 170, 173, 316, and 100,000, is that? Because we have an issue, and I just want to bring it up in the discussion because Mr. Tierney brought a point to me of our first action item, which was to reduce the budget and put a separate line item on referendum of $100,000. And what Mr. Tierney explained to me is that he doesn't think that that can be done because our budget has to reflect the actual amount when it goes to referendum. Because if we don't have the $100,000 and it's sitting in a separate line, even if that question gets voted on, it technically is not part of the budget that's been adopted. And then so during the recess, I said, maybe we flip-flop it and add it to the budget and have a question and take it out. But then again, you might have a budget number that passes with a question where it fails, and then we really have a problem here. So that $100,000 on the SRO being taken out or put as a separate line may create a huge problem. And I think we're going to have to get a legal opinion, Rob, and it's going to be important because there's a lot of questions on some of the other ballots too as well at the same time. So I don't know how we get through that, but we may have to take further action on that item, I guess, on next Monday.
Can I make a motion?
If you like.
Can we take the pass vote off the table, or ask the person who made the motion to take it off the table?
I can do it now. That's a rule. that I'm not sure. I don't think it's been acted on.
I make a motion to reconsider the decision of taking $100,000 and putting it to referendum.
Second.
Motion been made to reconsider the original motion of the $100,000 for the school resource officer being put as a separate referendum item, which was the first motion of the night, if I'm not mistaken. So we're in discussion. Joe, any questions?
Well, I think that, again, I think everybody wants it. I think understanding the dynamics that we probably got another situation here, I don't think it's worth that at this time. I think we should continue to find other reductions to compensate for it.
And I hope we're doing the right thing by reconsidering the motion procedurally. I respect Amy for bringing the decision forward. I will say this, I don't recall anyone contacting me as a board member to say that they were outright against school resource officer individually. I don't remember anyone coming here to the meetings and the public sessions we've had saying they were outright against the school resource officer. So, and I'm sure some of the other board members may have had a different opinion, but I just want to state from my standpoint is that, unfortunately, we had an unfortunate incident a week or two ago, and I think the message was even reiterated a lot louder for me as far as the need or a want of the community for a school resource officer program in the school. So I would support it and respectfully request that we reconsider this and get time.
I mean, I'm willing to change my vote, but are we gonna stand behind the vote this time? I mean, to agree with Joe, I mean, come on, I don't know how many times we kick the thing around. One person brings it up that, maybe we should be put on a ballot. I thought we were all behind this to begin with.
I think the intent, Tom, I think everybody's behind. I think we're just trying to think outside the box a little bit, and I think it kind of backfired on us. That's what I think.
The selectmen threw the monkey wrench in, they.
I think we're all trying to hear everybody's
No, I
position.
understand, but are we gonna stand behind the finding? That's what I'm at. I'm
That's how
willing
you
to
vote, Tom. And it's not going to be unanimous, and it doesn't have to be unanimous.
No, I realize.
It just has to be respectful.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way it needs to be. Yeah.
I think she was, I think it was a creative approach out front to try to take a very difficult budget situation and to make it more reasonable. So I don't know, because we've been doing so much. What percent are we at right now?
Right now, we're at $283,150 in reductions from the original budget of $28,226,787. So if someone could, the original budget was $28,226,787. That's
Okay.
5.12.
283,000.
All right.
Total reductions was how much?
Total reductions right now is 283,316.
316.
Need to reduce 123,759
I'm sorry, 273. I'm sorry.
If we have a goal.
to get to 3%, that's, I thought your goal.
I'm sorry, say it again.
If we want to get to 3,
3%?
I don't think anybody,
So
I
then you
wait,
reduce the
I don't think
5,000.
anyone has said the goal is 3%.
No, I don't think
Okay.
anybody.
No, I'm just saying that the superintendent proposed a number of 3%, but to that, just for clarity,
I like that.
All right, so 273, what, 150?
150.
Out of an original of 28.
Wait, we put the $2,000 back in. Tracking. So it's actually, it's 170.
It's gonna be around here, this point is gonna deal with
Yeah.
that, so just get a rough percentage. 77. Oops.
173 to 60.
I've got 28,226, 77, right?
CJ, what were you saying before? Sorry.
Well, no, if you were, because you had figured out to get to 3, the delta was how much left?
123,759 plus 100,000 for going to SRO.
Right, so we're back to
223.
223. It's an easier way to do it.
So, all right, we're back to your motion to reconsider. So,
But we didn't, we're not.
call to vote, or is there any further
We
discussion?
don't have a second.
Yes, do it.
I second it.
Seconded by Kevin. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to reconsider to put the school resource officer back into the proposed budget, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thanks. Motion passes. And so we're back to school resource officer. So that means the total reductions right now are 173,316.
Is that right?
Yep.
So from his original,
No, hold on.
And the bond refinance.
Right,
And
like
the
173,
173,
150 from the bond
Plus
refinance.
the 173,
Plus.
360.
Right.
so what is that? What percent increase is that at right now then, with what was just added back?
So it's 173 plus the. That's a total reduction of 346,466.
That's where we're at right
That's
now.
where we're at right now.
Gotta catch up.
What does that mean, the increases?
Work on that.
Okay. Let's hear that, matches the decrease. Budget to budget.
3.83.
Thank you.
So we're 3.8 budget to budget
Yep.
right now?
Yep.
Right now.
Right now, you're at 3.83.
What's the bottom line number?
Subtract 228,226,787. And then take away, subtract 346,460. Maybe 2,000. I will, I just took a calculator.
2780.
It's 227,880,
321, that's what I got. $27,880,321.
So we are right now at 3.83% increase.
Yep.
Is everybody getting that?
Yep.
Correct.
And the reduction is 346,
466.
46.
Yeah, 346,466.
346.
466.
Okay, any further action? We're coming up on 9:30, so if anybody has any other motions.
I make a motion that we move forward with the 3.8. increase, 328.3.
Motion made by Joe to put forth a budget of 3.83% for a total of,
27,880,321.
is there a second?
Can you repeat that number, please?
Yeah, 27,880,321.
Total increase of 3, second by Rich. Discussion. Joe, your motion.
No discussion.
Anyone else?
I'm just wondering about the board's position on capital and whether we're okay with bonding $1 million to pay for our responsibilities to the building and to the capital.
I don't think anybody's proposed any bonding at this point. There's no proposed bonding at this time for $1 million in capital fund.
That hasn't been, How will
I
we
was
fund
asked,
capital?
I was asked for a what-if scenario, and that's strictly a what-if scenario.
How are we gonna fund capital?
I think there's some dynamics we have to discuss in total context. Because we not only have to worry about funding capital, we also have to think about what reductions we're going to press to do as student populations decrease. There are some significant discussions that have to happen at various levels. Can the models that we have in place in the middle school be sustained with student numbers the same way? Does that change? Does that change our numbers? And all of that has to be folded into one conversation. I don't think you can take one without the other.
We've got a capital budget like in place here for, how much is that?
352,000 for next year.
For next year, 352,000. Now, I'm not suggesting that we put all that into the budget, but I think that neglecting to put any in the budget is certainly responsibilities to capital. Continuing to just, as Mike said earlier, kick it down to a different day.
I think the reality is, if you want to put it in, you're going to have enough in cuts to offset it for the budget we can pass. That's just what we're doing.
Like,
I'm what?
Do you have any questions or?
No, I don't agree with you. So, no, I don't understand.
I think 3.83 is still too high. It's almost 4%. I think there were some issues we haven't even talked about that Bob had on his revenue possibilities. His proposal for the reduction. We actually had done one, which was the John Deere tractor, so we've done that. And I think we need to just look at those at the very least and discuss them, especially the revenue portions, the student parking fees, participation fees for athletics increase, community use of buildings, revenue, participation fees co-curricular. It came to a total of 81,000, and I think that we need to talk about that or some others on that list down below. Reductions, many of which are not that close to the classroom. You know, he's made an effort, I think, here to do things that are further removed from the classroom issues. And so I think we should look at them at the very least and try to bring it down more.
Mike?
I'm not ready to go with 3.3.
Amy, any other comments? Rich?
If we don't talk about it during budget season, when will we talk about our maintenance? We are obligated by law to spend $175,000 next year for eight handicap accessibility, and we have approximately a track that is 3 to 4 years overdue. So we're risking increasing the cost of replacing that track then rather than just seal it. And I think the fire stops, yep, we cut out, we are in violation of the fire code, and we are supposed to be putting these fire stops in for $28,000. You talk about safety, they're more likely that a fire would cause problems. So that's a fair amount of money.
So you oppose the motion?
How are we gonna deal with it maintenance?
That's fine. Do you oppose the motion? I mean, the motion's on the floor, it's been seconded, we're in discussion, so if you're against it, that's, I mean, unless you have anything else. Kevin?
I've said this to a few people before. I think honestly, at a 3% increase, we might have a chance of getting it to pass across the three towns. I think at 3.5, you lose Marlboro. Hebron's tough, has been traditionally anyway, but maybe could justify it. Once you push into the high threes and you get 4 and higher, forget it, it's just not going to pass. And we can argue all we want that we need the money. We can argue all the good we want. We can argue until the cows come home as 11 people that this is stuff that we need. But if the taxpayers are not willing to say yes to it, so I'm just trying to be realistic about it. So that's why I say, I fully understand the capital need, I'm fully supportive of capital as we need it, but we've got to find reductions in other places to offset it. We've got to find cuts. Because we can't go forward with big numbers.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing more about what Kevin said about that deeper conversation, because I'm not sure I know about that with the middle school or what you said, but I do support the 3.83, and part of why I do is because the base is lower. So it's a 3.83 on a lower base, and we still will not be what many of our neighboring communities are at. So I think that needs to be taken into account as well.
Sure.
Well, I'm just trying to move this along. I mean,
No,
I definitely want more money in capital. I hear what everybody's saying. So, I don't want to lose the $100,000, but if we're going to start going down and you want to start willing through this, okay,
So, just so that, just for clarification for me, Bob, this particular number based on the cuts we've made so far, does it include the funding of freshman sports?
I'm sorry?
Does it include the freshman sports funding for the first time for the board? The desktop technician, 20,431.
Yeah, if you look at his recommended, his second round, we've accounted for the refunding of the bonds,
Yeah.
we accounted for the John Deere tractor, and the rest we haven't touched.
So we still have eliminate the one-to-one request reduction of amount lease calculation of 42,683. What is that number, Bob? What's in that one-to-one lease?
I'm sorry?
That's not doing the middle school one-to-one computers.
So that eliminates the proposal to have the 8th grade come to one-to-one
That's
next
correct.
year, okay. All right. Okay.
I'd like to comment on that. I think that's probably the one item in that list that I would like to see remain.
Which one?
The one-to-one computers.
It's in.
It's still there now, we haven't, nobody's proposed to take it off yet.
So if the motion passes and the board adopts a 3.83 to put forward, that will be included.
I think that what we need to look at, again, are the revenue issues. In particular, student parking fees, 200 vehicles at $150 per, or a $30,000 amount. If we have the SRO officer, he will be, I'm sure, valuable in helping to enforce that. I think it will mean perhaps maybe more carpooling and sharing, and it has better impact on the environment, less gas being used, and less congestion, and will make it safer out there. So I think that's something to consider. And then I don't think there was a lot of opposition to upping the fees for athletics somewhat. That comes to $23,192. And then community use of buildings, I think maybe we need some clarification on that. The one-on-one computers, I think, are important in the long run. We have I think that the administration has a good plan. We studied it actually in Marlboro. The Marlboro board studied it because we wanted to be in coordination with what was happening in the high school. So we looked into it, and the rationale for the Chromebooks and the use of them, and the 4 or 5 year plan to incorporate it slowly into the school, I think, made sense to me and made sense to most people that I talked to at that point in time. And we did a lot of research and we did a lot of talking back and forth. So I do support that. And the instructional supplies level fund current year, I guess that was something that we didn't talk about yet, but maybe Bob can clarify.
So on Joe's, thank you, Carol, on Joe's motion to put forth a budget of $27,880,321, which is a 3.81% increase. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion fails. So before we go into public comment, since we're past our 9:30 hour, are there any other proposed action items on the budget?
I'd like to make a motion that we set fees